Ready Nevada County is an education campaign designed to help the public have successful outcomes during emergency events. We really focus on a whole host of disasters or emergency events. We want to have a broad spectrum. We want to be prepared for anything, but really we focus a lot on wildfire because we know that's one of the most likely events to happen in Nevada County.
Ready, set,
From the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, a new hero will emerge. One who is ready. One who makes sure their friends and family are set. And has the power to go at a moment's notice.
Ready Nevada County is an education campaign designed to help the public have successful outcomes during emergency events. We really focus on a whole host of disasters or emergency events. We want to have a broad spectrum. We want to be prepared for anything, but really we focus a lot on wildfire because we know that's one of the most likely events to happen in Nevada County.
Ready, Set, Go is really built around the wildfire premise to prepare residents to be ready before an event, to move into the set posture when there's a red flag or a fire is near you, and then to go when it's time to go.
Essentially, in its simplest form, it's a three-tiered community emergency preparedness plan.
I have lived in this house, which we built, my husband and I, 26 years ago now, actually. We selected the hardy plank, the concrete siding, and also the metal roof. Then when we moved up here and heard about the 49er fire, that's when we started to say, wow, this really is even more important than we first realized.
So the 49er fire is one of the most historic fires in Nevada County's history. They figured it changed the laws of the state of California that said this is how you have to protect your home. That came out of Nevada County.
Steve Eubanks came from the Fire Safe Council, and the main thing we needed to pay attention to was the ladder fuels. Planting has been removed from the edges of the house so that it does not touch the house. It was an incredible service from the Fire Safe Council to come out and spend a couple of hours going through this property.
So the ready phase is when there's no immediate threat to you and your family. This is the time when you should be doing education and planning, whether that be training, educating yourself, or accumulating equipment, hardening your home, creating defensible space.
Defensible space is really all about creating a buffer zone between your house and flammable vegetation. We really focus on defensible space around the home, that first 100 feet, but also around the roadway too. Another aspect of the ready phase is hardening the home, and really what that means is making your home more resilient to wildfire.
That's going to be putting the fine-grained mesh around the vents of your home so that embers won't get under your house or into the eaves of your house. That's going to be using
We'll call this session of the Board of Supervisors, regular meeting of March 14th, 2023. Nick, Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Yes. No. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just kind of note here that Supervisor Bullock is out of the area, but with us virtually today. So as we go into things, I'm going to try to call on Hardy first, if that's okay with you guys, just so that he kind of has a feeling as to how it's going to go. So with that, Madam Clerk, are there any corrections or deletions to the agenda?
Thank you, Chair. I just did want to announce that when the agenda posted, we did not note that it was also being posted at Supervisor Bullock's location, and I can confirm that it indeed posted there, and the public is aware and will be able to attend the meeting alongside him if they choose to do so.
Very good. I think you're in Georgia, aren't you, Hardy? If that's the case, there's probably not too many folks real interested in this. All right, let's go right into our general public comment. Members of the public shall be allowed to address the Board of Supervisors on items not appearing on today's agenda that are of interest to the public and are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Speakers are encouraged but not required to give their name and district of residence. Please direct your comments to the board, not the audience or staff. No individual may speak more than once during public comment. In the interest of civil discourse, it is the responsibility of the chair to ensure public comments are conducted in such a manner that avoids disruptive activity, promotes mutual respect, keeps comments focused on issues, and avoids personal attacks. Time limits may be modified, but at this time they are 3 minutes per person. Oh, you guys know the drill.
Yes, good morning.
Ralph, go ahead and start it.
Ralph Silberstein for CEA Foundation. I'll be presenting the first page of this document and submitting the rest later. Airborne asbestos is hazardous to inhale, leading to lung cancer and other diseases. The Idaho Maryland Mine final EIR does not provide enough data to determine the potential impacts of airborne asbestos, and the Asbestos Management Plan, or ASURE plan, for preventing hazardous emissions is inadequate. Very limited asbestos testing was done, constituting less than 2/10,000ths of the total rock to be mined over the project lifespan. As the Air Quality Board stated, quote, "It would be short-sighted to commit to the ASURE plan for the entire life of the mine based on the few samples that have been tested so far," unquote. The ASURE plan was developed to limit emissions, but it is a flawed document that fails to provide the needed protections. Under the plan, if the asbestos concentrations on any 1,000-ton lot of mined materials would put the 3-month rolling average asbestos concentration over a threshold of 0.01%, it would not be allowed to be exported. A key problem is accurate and timely testing. It takes 2 weeks to get the results. The final EIR has no provisions for stockpiling materials while waiting for results, and no temporary storage on the surface is provided. To avoid the need for stockpiling mined materials, the plan states that exploratory drilling tests will determine what can be mined in advance. Then grab samples will be taken as the rock loaded into silos is ready for deployment, but the testing is too sparse. The loading into silos of 1,000 tons of rock requires about 166 6-ton skip loads. This means that the grab test will only capture, on average, about 1 out of 55 skip loads. And even then, the 3 grab samples will be mixed together to form one combined test. And even accurate sample testing before shipping will not always prevent exceeding the safe average threshold. Examination of how this system may fail reveals that large quantities of mine waste could pass through undetected. And though the ASURE plan talks about what happens when the delayed testing shows that the threshold was exceeded, it doesn't actually provide a credible solution or adequate oversight. Finally, it's important to note that all exported mine waste from this mine must be classified as restricted materials. Aggregate suppliers in the region have indicated that they do not handle restricted materials because there is no market for them, and there already are abundant aggregate sources regionally. In conclusion, the final EIR does not provide adequate data on asbestos concentrations and fails to adequately address processing and disposal of asbestos-bearing mine waste. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph.
Well, good morning, too. And I'm Jim Baer, leader of the Stop the Mine Task Force in Grass Valley, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to comment on the Rise Gold Mine final environmental impact report this morning. I'm submitting a technical report with the details that back up every statement I'm going to make. And I do want to say that the previous speaker and I have not coordinated our presentations, but we're going to be talking about a similar area, which is the asbestos pollution that will be caused by this mine. So after several months of research, we find that the asbestos mitigation measure is inadequate for dozens of reasons, and I just have a few points here. There's no question that asbestos is present in the mineral rights area. The quantity cannot be predicted because rock sampling using 19 boreholes to assess 2,500 acres is not statistically valid. Given asbestos will become airborne, there is no adequate measurement once it's in the air. Measurement technology is limited by the submicroscopic size of asbestos fibers. Extremely small numbers of asbestos fibers are even more lethal in causing cancer, mesothelioma, and asbestosis, and then ultimately death. The proposed mitigation is actually for dust, which is larger particles, and asbestos fibers are often 10 to 20 times smaller than the dust that will be captured by the proposed or suggested measures. Actually, asbestos is more like smoke and can toxify air miles from its source, including county districts 2 and 4. The proposed asbestos mitigation measure is only for dust using water spraying, washing truck tires, sealing hauling trucks, paving, rock processing, or chemical stabilizers, etc. Even then, the FER itself admits some dust will escape. The submission of the asbestos dust mitigation plan to the Northern Sierra Air Quality Management District for review is not to be done until after project approval, and I've discussed this with 2 senior staffers at the Northern Sierra Air Quality Resources Board and learned a lot. Their input is really not being addressed, I've found, in the final environmental impact report. Finally, the FER states in 7 places that the details of mitigation measures are not required by CEQA, which is subjective and situational to say the least. So thank you for your time, and this information has been delivered to the Planning Commission as well.
Thank you, Jim.
Good morning. My name is John Vaughn. I live in District 3. The last time I was here, one of the things I noted is that the final EIR responses demonstrate a bias towards the applicant. In case you have not had time to review the letter I sent, which includes that topic, I'm going to talk about it today. One example in the final EIR response is the final EIR response to the draft EIR comments submitted by the City of Grass Valley. Part of the city's letter challenges the 80-year permit and suggests a 30-year alternative. The final EIR response defends the RISE proposal by speculating in part that, quote, long permit terms are commonly requested for large mining operations because they are capital intensive and it is not economically feasible to invest tens or even hundreds of millions of dollars when the number of years to obtain a return on investment are limited to only a few decades. First, words matter, and lead the reader in a particular direction. For example, where's the definition of large mining operation? What data supports that a self-declared junior mining company is large? Second, not economically feasible, and when the number of years to obtain a return are limited to only a few decades, is speculation on behalf of RISE, which is not supported by any research or facts. The data provided by RISE for the economic report and the draft EIR shows startup costs between $70 and $100 million. And it shows a net profit of just under $112 million a year after startup. Using the net profit numbers provided by RISE, it would take less than 1 year to pay off the startup costs. But let's recognize that those numbers are inflated to entice investors, the public, and the county. So in reality, it may take them several years to pay off the initial startup costs. Certainly, it won't exceed 10 years. While I disagree with the economic report conclusions that are based on data provided by RISE, the final EIR authors had access to all the data, but chose to claim the RISE large mining operation could not afford to operate unless they can spread the costs over 80 years. Speculative at best and biased at worst. I have not read each of the 8,661 pages of the final EIR, but I have reviewed enough to see that speculation and bias exist in other parts of the report as well. I respectfully request you just say no to the final EIR and the RISE Gold proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good morning, Chairman Schofield and honorable supervisors of Nevada County. Gil Matthew, the Executive Director for the Nevada County Economic Resource Council. Glad to be here this morning to tell you again that we are about to launch the Tour of Nevada County 2023, which will be on April the 27th, a Thursday. We'll be starting 8 o'clock in the morning, touring 5 companies in the western Nevada County, and looking at some of those economic engines that I like to tag as the economic engines behind the Manzanita curtain. So I want to extend an invitation to all of you to join us on the 27th. I would like to be able to tell you where we're going to start, stop, and have lunch, but unfortunately, as of this morning, I was just noticed that the In Concert Sierra building will not be available, which is where we have been planning for a year to be. Is not available, so we're on a search, and I will return with where that start, stop, and lunch will be, but it will be an all-day tour, starting with a continental breakfast, touring 3 facilities, coming back, having lunch, touring 2 more facilities, getting you out of there by 3:30 in the afternoon. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing all of you on the Tour of Nevada County. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil.
Well, good morning. My name is Douglas Bianchi. I live in Nevada City, and appropriate to my age, the circumstances, and my topic, I have some handwritten notes I'd like to share. First of all, I'd like to thank the board, Mr. Chairman, and the staff for all of your dedicated service during the current difficult times. At the last press conference, Sheriff Moon said that most of the service calls received by the Sheriff's Department were for welfare checks from people who could not reach friends or family. The communication networks in Nevada County are fragile, poorly understood, and poorly explained during outages. After the public safety power shutoff system was put in place, I made some changes that allow me to get by for a few days without the power grid. My cable internet service and my cell service, however, both failed within 2 hours of the failure of electric power and did not return for days, even after the power was restored. Important questions remain. Evidently, even county officials were not getting their calls returned from the service providers, perhaps because they lack regulatory authority. It was frustrating, to say the least, to be told to go online for more information, the website being presumably www.goodluckconnecting.com. Internet access has become at least as important as electric power. I'm grateful for our 911 system and dedicated first responders. Imagine how their efforts would be multiplied if 911 was not the first or even the only option for our citizens. Nevada County can profitably advocate to our local cell and internet providers and with the California Utilities Commission for hardening infrastructure and extending service time in an emergency. Let me make 4 specific suggestions for next time. 1, brief the public on the progress of repairs with time estimates. 2, make cellular and internet systems interoperable. 3, require the capacity to operate for at least 48 hours without power from the grid. 4, provide the Sheriff's Department with portable Starlink ground stations to be used as temporary cell and internet hotspots. Please work toward treating the internet as the essential public utility it truly is. I trust you can mobilize folks smarter than me who can figure it out. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Doug. Do you want to leave those notes with our clerk, and then we'll have copies of that?
I'm honored.
Madam Clerk, is there anyone online?
Yes, Chair, we do have one caller.
You bring the caller in?
Yes, please bring the caller in.
Hotspots. Please work toward treating the internet as the essential public utility it truly is. I trust you can mobilize folks smarter than me who can figure it out. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Doug. Do you want to leave those notes with our clerk, and then we'll have copies of that?
Chair, I think what's happening is the public commenter on the line is we're hearing his TV. So we need to, so public commenter, if you could just please turn down your TV and proceed forward.
Okay, bring the caller in.
Can we bring that caller in, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you. Go
This is Polly
ahead.
Halstead. Thank you. Good morning. This is Polly Halstead. And I sent in several written comments as well as videos of the Matthew Coulter assault by Mark Nelson and Mark Olson. So anyone who's listening today can access those in the agenda packet. But at any rate, I would like to add that on February 10th, when Matthew was able to get a hold of the videos, he went to the Grass Valley police station and filed assault charges against Nelson and Olson. Those assault charges were turned over to the district attorney, who has done nothing. Why are the district attorney and the police protecting these two men? Anyway, there are also missing videos. There's at least an hour's worth of that mass cam video that was not turned over to the public defender. There's also missing dash cam minutes. So there are a lot of problems with this case, and I'm hoping the county and county council will step in and investigate what has happened here and what has gone wrong. We have to have trust in our police department and our district attorney's office to follow the law. There's policy and procedures that have been missed here. There's been collusion to keep Matthew in jail while he was running for office. There are so many things wrong with what happened here, and it just has to stop. So I'm hoping that county council will please step in to make sure that these charges get dropped. They're false charges. Would really appreciate all of you taking responsibility for what happens in the DA's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. Is there any other public comment in the chambers? Are there any other callers?
There's no other callers, but I do have two brief letters to read if you would like me to do so.
Very good. Thank you, Julie.
And then, Chair, we need to take a short break for technical purposes after this.
Very good.
Thank you. This is District 3 residents. Her name is Elise Hoganson. She writes, there's an ongoing problem at the Grass Valley Library, the few homeless and transient people being very loud and using lewd language. They can also crowd the tables. I am a property owner, patron, and a few weeks ago had to call upon a library clerk to quiet and finally remove a loud person. Now others have complained with similar incidences and even of being blamed for what the homeless do themselves due to poor listening on the part of staff when complaints arise. God love the marginalized and we help them when we can, but it seems to me that the Veterans Hall has a warming center 2 blocks away and should be the ones distributing blankets. Perhaps a couple couches with a table and some donated books could be in the corner of the Vets Hall in which they can be loud. The library is funded to be a library, not a homeless shelter. Thank you for your consideration. Second letter is also from a District 3 resident, and that's Bob Mora. And he writes, I cannot understand why the Board of Supervisors or anyone else would even consider granting a use permit to Ben Mossman and Rise Gold. Ben Mossman is going through court proceedings now for a failed mining venture in British Columbia that he left with the Canadian taxpayers having to pick up the cleanup bill. Just the light pollution alone from a plant running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, less than a mile from central Grass Valley would be enormous. We can have a town that is a mecca for art, music, and tourism, or an industrial town, but not both. There are several good articles in the Grass Valley Union newspaper, and he would encourage the board and everyone considering the use permit for Rise Gold to read the articles and vote no on reopening the mine.
Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
With that, I am going to close the public comment portion of this meeting, and we will take a quick 5-minute break for technical